Welcome to CBC Windsor News at 6. I'm Meg Roberts. Thanks so much for spending part of your evening with us tonight. Strike action by Canada Border Services Agency is on hold, with a new deadline now in effect. Plus, CBC has learned the rate at which prisoners are put into segregation has gone up, with isolation happening in Windsor more than most places in Ontario. And as thousands in our region await a long-term care bed, there are multiple projects that are significantly lagging behind schedule. Strike action at the border has been averted. Members of the Customs and Immigration Union have postponed any work to rule action until next Wednesday. Dale Molnar is at the Ambassador Bridge right now. Dale, can you tell us what you're seeing?
Well, Meg, it looks fairly backed up there, but this is a Friday, right? So you always have these backups during the week. I've been monitoring the wait times at the bridge and the tunnel. It's been like maybe 20 minutes to 30 minutes of wait times all day, depending on whether it was the bridge or the tunnel. And we'll be hearing about this from somebody who is trying to get across the border today. Also coming up right here, I talked to some people earlier today about this situation, about the angst in the community and some of the businesses that are concerned. So I spoke with the president of the Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters in Canada, and also I spoke with the vice president at the Faro Customs Brokerage, and they handle the paperwork for the truckers. They send the paperwork into customs.
The most part, it's an electronic release. However, we do ask for our clients and our importers, when there's other government agencies involved, or when a customs officer has to actually physically review the paperwork, we ask that takes more time, and that's where we expect to see a slowdown.
A slowdown or a shutdown at the border affects, the 1.8 million Canadians who work in manufacturing, tens of thousands of companies, and who produce the goods that we produce with the U.S. and sometimes we supply them, sometimes they supply each other. So I think it's extremely important for those workers because any delays either cost money in terms of the manufacturers, but ultimately if the delays are extended over a period of time, what happens is companies have to shut down production or because they can't get parts or they can't get materials or packaging.
We tried to go across at Blue Water first, and it was a 10-mile backup, and we didn't know why, so we came back down here, and it seems like it's just as much of a delay now too.
Okay, so we got a respite until next Wednesday. The union has said that they will continue to negotiate with a mediator, to negotiate with the Treasury Board until next Wednesday. That's when they put a deadline now for another possible job action. So we'll keep watching that. The last time they did this, had a job action that only lasted a day. It was 2021, and truckers said that they had wait times of like 10 hours to get across the border. Meg?
Thanks so much for that, Dale. That's the CBC's Dale Molnar reporting live from the Ambassador Bridge. For years, Ontario has faced calls to end segregation in provincial jails. That's when prisoners are physically and socially isolated in a cell for 22 hours or more. A CBC investigation has learned that tactic has only been ramping up across the province since 2019. And in Windsor, it's happening more than most places in Ontario. Bobby Hristova is a reporter with CBC News, and he's been digging into the story. He joins us now to break this down. Bobby, where did you get this information from, and what did you find?
So part of it is public data, and we also filed a Freedom of Information request to get some figures. And using that, we were able to calculate a segregation rate for all 25 Ontario-run jails between early 2019 and early 2023. And that rate basically looks at how many times a single person went into these segregation conditions. And what we found is in Ontario, this segregation has grown in the past 5 years from about 2 segregations per prisoner to 7 segregations per prisoner. The highest rate is in Hamilton, the Hamilton Wentworth Detention Center, with 31 segregations per prisoner. In Windsor, you have the Southwest Detention Center, and that also has one of the higher rates at 11 segregations per prisoner. And then you have a smaller facility, the Sarnia Jail, and there you have a segregation rate of roughly 3 per prisoner. And now that is a smaller number compared to the others, but it is important to note, experts said, A smaller segregation rate doesn't necessarily mean it's better, because they could be going in fewer times, but for longer periods. It's also worth noting roughly 80% of people in these provincially run jails have not been convicted of the charges that landed them behind bars. I spoke with Howard Sapers, the former Federal Corrections Investigator of Canada, and he told me that there's a whole list of reasons why this might be happening.
When you're using segregation that much in one site, which is what it appears to be, that tells you you've got some other serious issues. You may have staffing issues. You may have morale issues. You may have training issues. You may have even just policy awareness and compliance issues.
We also heard from OPSU, the union representing jail staff at the jail, and they told us that a lack of staffing, a lack of training, and a lack of resources have put the jails in crisis. They also said that they realize segregation has detrimental effects on people, but there's no other practical alternative for them.
Bobby, these facilities are being overseen by the Office of the Solicitor General. What did the province have to say about it?
You're right. We asked them for an interview. They turned us down. We also asked a list of questions. We sent them an email, and it was 12 detailed questions. They didn't get back to us on answering those specifically, but they did send a statement, and in that statement, contrary to what we found, they said that they've been making progress on keeping people out of segregation. They also said that since 2020, they've been investing $100 million annually to improve conditions and hire staff. What they also told us is that sometimes segregation is necessary to protect other prisoners, to protect the person in isolation, and that some people actually ask to go into segregation. Sapers, though, told us that if someone's asking to go into segregation, it's a sign that maybe the conditions in that jail aren't very good.
Thanks so much for that, Bobby. That's the CBC's Bobby Hristova reporting for us tonight. 2 people have been arrested after more than $200,000 in drugs were seized by Windsor police. After a 2-month investigation, officers executed search warrants in East Windsor around 1 a.m. this morning. They say this bust is connected to a suspected drug network with links to Toronto. Officers seized a large amount of cocaine, fentanyl, meth, and oxycodone. They also recovered a bulletproof vest and hundreds of rounds of ammo. A 28-year-old and 30-year-old have each been charged with several offenses. As thousands of people in the region face long wait lists to get into long-term care, CBC Windsor has learned several facilities that were expected to bring hundreds of additional beds to the area have been delayed. The CBC's Jennifer LaGrassa reports.
This spot across from Banwell Gardens is supposed to house new and improved long-term care beds for the facility. Construction was expected to begin in summer of 2022, but that hasn't happened, and it's not the only delayed project. More than 2 years ago, the government said that Berkshire Care Centre, Regency Park, and Chateau Park would all get entirely new facilities, bringing 200 new long-term care beds and more than 500 improved ones to the region. Construction was supposed to start on each of these sometime last year, but ground hasn't even been broken on any of them. 2 haven't even acquired land. These projects are just some of many that the government has announced in recent years in an effort to improve the long-term care sector. But we're hearing that high construction costs, high cost of borrowing money, as well as difficulty getting land is what's causing delays. One local MPP says the government recently allocated $155.5 million extra, which he hopes will help.
The ball is in the home's court because ultimately they're the ones who will tender the project.
But for people with loved ones in need of care, these delays are disheartening. At the end of February, waitlists in Windsor, Essex were more than 4,700 spots long to get into care homes. Windsor resident Cassandra Wilding was shocked at the wait. She's power of attorney for a family friend who's trying to get in.
My family friend basically looked at me, with her being in her mid-80s now, said, I'm going to die waiting to get into this place. It's not a priority. These people are being left to rot.
In emailed statements, the homes say that they are all striving to provide the best care possible for residents. Regency Park and Berkshire Care Center are still trying to find land. They say it's difficult in an urban space like Windsor. Banwell Gardens and Chateau Park are still looking for bids on their projects. None of the homes said when construction would begin.
Well, for more on this, we're going to bring in CBC's Jennifer LaGrassa. Jen, you've recently done a lot of reporting on this controversial long-term care policy, which is where hospitals are charging people $400 a day if they do not go into a long-term care home that is selected on their behalf. How does this play into that conversation?
Yeah, so I've spoken about this a lot with Michelle Campo, and Michelle is someone whose mom is being charged $26,000 by a Windsor hospital under this policy. And that's because she didn't move from hospital into a long-term care home that was immediately available and chosen for her. And that home was Regency Park, which is one of the 4 delayed long-term care projects. It's supposed to get an entirely new facility as it's older and doesn't meet current standards. Here's what
I don't understand how you can justify trying to make me put her in that place when they know it's not up to standard, and then charge me when I agree with them and refuse. It's kind of ridiculous in a way.
She wants to see Bill 7 revoked, and she questions how it's fair for people to be charged when they're being told to go to homes that need significant renovations. Here's Andrew Dowie's response.
Bill 7 would not be necessary if we didn't have that near collapse in the building of long-term care homes prior to the election of the government. If we had rebuilt homes, if we had spaces, then there would be really no difficulty in someone finding a long-term care bed that they could have a lot of comfort in.
So we'll continue to follow these projects as they progress, but at this time, it's really unclear when they will start or be done by.
Thanks so much for that, Jen. That's CBC's Jennifer LaGrassa. A group helping Black families navigate the education system is expanding their services into Essex County. Family Fuse offers free workshops and coaching to help children and their parents navigate through instances of racism and harassment in Windsor schools. They've helped more than 200 families across Windsor over the past 4 years, and they're now hoping to do the same in Kingsville and Leamington.
So we found that there's a lot of inequality in the school system. There is a breakdown of communication, and children are being victimized a lot of times by people who are in power. So this is about awareness. This is about being culturally aware of everyone who's around you, and being that there's so many people who are immigrants moving into the Leamington, Kingsville area. We want to be able to help those families and enrich their lives.
Colette, you weren't lying about that wind. It whipped up last night while the CBC team was playing volleyball, as we do Thursdays. And to be honest, I think it might have worked in our favor.
Oh, good.
Because
were you on the right side of that?
Yes, and we won our very first game last night after weeks and weeks of trying. Here's a picture of us celebrating that big win.
Oh,
and I think the win really was played a big part, because there were a few plays that the ball would sail onto our side, and then the wind would carry it onto the other.
Nice. Yes, we had the atmospheric, bonus in there. But I love the picture, and congratulations.
Thank you so much. Yes. So now we're coming into a big weekend. There's lots of events. What do we have going on? Well,
you're talking about the winds, so I'm going to talk about winds too. Why don't I start there? But talking about the upper winds, okay, the upper atmosphere, the jet stream. So a lot of things with the jet stream. It's those strong winds that the same thing that if you're going, from Windsor on a flight to Vancouver, say, and it takes 5 hours, when you come back and you're traveling west to east, that flight takes advantage of those strong winds in that direction, and your flight back might be 4 hours. So, if there's was a direct flight. All right, it's that kind of idea. But the other thing with the jet stream often is kind of that dividing line between cooler temperatures to the north and maybe warmer to the south, and that's sort of what we're seeing here. So we have this trough, that area of low pressure, some of the instability, and temperatures, it's not that they're cool, it's just a little below seasonal, and in fact it deepens a little bit as we go into Monday. We're very close to that border here in southwestern Ontario, but that begins to flip around and we get a ridge building in as we go towards Tuesday and mid next week. And by the time we're to the end of next week with that ridge, we're actually going to find our temperatures really heating up well above seasonal. So all kinds of things go on at this time of year with those temperatures. The current reading at 20 degrees. Yes, still looking at that breeze coming out of the west. There are still some stronger gusts, but I'll tell you they tend to be under 40 kilometers an hour. So we'll just stick with the sustained there in terms of the graphic I'm using. And some activity, more of it north and to the east due to that upper low that's still spinning and causing that active weather. We get into a nice break in between these systems, but another one is on the way that will have an impact into the weekend. So tonight, no problems. Clearing skies, good conditions early Saturday as well. It looks really nice. As we get into Saturday afternoon, we'll rapidly see that increase in cloudiness, but still should be dry. Late afternoon, though, we begin to see these showers developing and then getting into more organized rain, especially along the north shore of Lake Erie, stretching from London over towards, say, the Niagara region. So much of that happening kind of later on the day, at least Saturday, and gone by Sunday with just a few isolated showers after that. So that's not going to be so bad, is it, to contend with? With those clear skies tonight, 10 to 12 degrees for the lows. Tomorrow, yeah, pretty close to seasonal, so temperature's not so much a problem there. It's where it gets a little bit cooler as that trough into Monday, but then we begin that climb going, like I said, as we get into that ridging in the other direction. And boy, oh boy, we're starting to hit the high 20s by the time we get to midweek and next week towards the end.
Thanks so much for that, Colette.
You're welcome.
Coming up, Josiah is standing by for his Week's End segment to talk about a very busy weekend. Stay tuned. Josiah Sinanen now joins us for his Week's End segment. Josiah, it's that time of year where there are so many events going on. Every single weekend, it's packed with events. This weekend, Poutine Fest, the Strawberry Festival, there are film screenings. What are you going to be talking about this week?
Oh man, that is, yeah, it's making me feel tired just you saying all that. There's a big list, lots of options for you, and it can end up being a really packed weekend. If you're a savvy planner, you'll want to take some notes. But Meg, what's really tying together the festive energy in the city is the fact that it is our birthday. It's the City of Windsor's birthday this weekend.
How old are we turning?
It's a big number, 132. Yeah,
wow.
Pretty special. Now, I guess you make up some of the years of that history, and now I do too. And it's really cool when you think about our corner of the globe and how much Windsor has gone through. You think of the War of 1812, the rich Indigenous history, the French period, the Underground Railroad, and you can really take that all in tomorrow at the Chimchuck Museum and Art Windsor Essex. Both museums will have free admission throughout the day, but before you head out to the museum, you'll want it to be outside the WFCU Center at 10:30 a.m. There's going to be some special presentations, the singing of Happy Birthday, and the cutting of a special 132nd birthday cake.
That better be a pretty big cake.
Meg, you know it's going to be important. And you know what? It's not just this big cake. There is also going to be 1,500 cupcakes that have been baked in honor of the city's birthday. And you and I can have one of them. Anyone who attends can have one. And that's all done by Sweet Revenge Bakery. Now, they've been responsible for the city's birthday cake over the past 3 years, and they're also making those 1,500 cupcakes. Pretty crazy. 1,500
cupcakes. I can barely make a dozen without feeling exhausted, so 1,500 is way too much.
I can't even decorate one, so.
I know you can't decorate one.
We've tried that before. We're not going to be replacing Sweet Revenge. No. Well, Meg, Mike Evans actually headed there earlier in the midst of the chaos today. Let's take a look.
It is quite busy. We got 1,500 cupcakes, plus we're in the middle of wedding season, regular orders. And you have to have all this delivered by 8 a.m. tomorrow. It's all for the City of Windsor, half vanilla, half chocolate, nice blue icing, and we're doing a cake to match. We do it for their birthday, so we put the logo of the city on it, a big standing number of the 132 that we're turning this year, and the mayor gets to cut it. I have extra staff in. Even one of my family members came in to help me. We have, I think, 144 per box, 6 cupcakes per clamshell, and then we're gonna need to do about 12 boxes and have it all delivered. So we're renting a U-Haul later today.
You gotta be a little bit nervous, like making sure that everything goes well, right?
I am, but now that it is, like I said, our 3rd or 4th year, we're pretty used to it. Like last year, the year before, like 2 months in advance, we were like, how are we gonna work this out? And maybe Tuesday, we were like, okay, let's do it.
Well, Meg, I'm glad that I'm not in the kitchen making those cupcakes, but that did make me feel a little bit peckish. I don't know about you.
Did it? Oh, yeah, it made me as well.
Are you feeling a little grumble in your tummy?
I love a good cupcake.
You know what? I have a surprise for you.
Oh.
We have some of the chocolate cupcakes from Sweet Revenge as a preview for what you'll experience tomorrow. And I think we should give a cheers to the City of Windsor.
Happy birthday, City of Windsor.
Happy birthday, City of Windsor.
Maybe we'll eat these on commercial break.
Yeah, we don't want blue on the face or anything. So
absolutely.
Yeah, okay, sounds good.
We've got more news coming up after the break. today saw some of the final events marking the 80th anniversary of D-Day, including 2 events in France honoring Canadians. CBC's Julia Wong has more.
There were some poignant moments at a ceremony to mark the special relationship between Canada and France. Hundreds of people gathered at Le Jardin des Canadiens at a war museum in Caen. Here there is a memorial garden on the grounds of the War Museum, and there's a wall that lists the names of more than 120 towns and communities that were liberated by Canadians. Today, a plaque was unveiled listing more than 90 other names of towns and communities that were also liberated by the Canadians. You could really get a sense of the gratitude and appreciation from those here in the crowd, and you could see that as the mayors of those new towns and communities on that plaque laid roses at the memorial garden. And then later on, when there was a playing of O Canada, those in the crowd sang the anthem in French. Earlier today, there was a round of applause as 10 Second World War veterans arrived at the Bretteville-sur-Lez War Cemetery. Some were able to walk in on their own, others were pushed on wheelchairs by loved ones. There are more than 2,800 people who are buried at this cemetery, the majority of them Canadian. And when you're there and you see the rows and rows of headstones, you really get a sense of the scale of loss that Canada suffered. Now, one of those veterans was 100-year-old Lieutenant General Richard Romer, and he was 19 years old when he landed on Juno Beach on D-Day. When he got to the cemetery, he made a point to head straight away to a headstone to pay his respects. And later on, he spoke about what it meant to be back at that cemetery.
All of the people here who are as old as I and as veterans are here for the purpose of remembering their comrades who are in this graveyard. I have several. It's a long time ago, but it's important for people like me to attempt to come and pay respects to them.
The group of veterans have one more event on Saturday, and then they fly back to Canada on Sunday. Julia Wong, CBC News, Caen, France.
Pat Sajak will take his final turn as host of Wheel of Fortune tonight. Letter Turner Vanna White paid an emotional tribute to her co-host and friend of 41 years.
You're like a brother to me, and I consider you a true lifelong friend who I will always adore. I love you, Pat.
After 8,000 episodes and countless spins of the wheel, Pat Sajak is packing it in as the renowned host of the iconic game show. Ryan Seacrest is set to succeed him, and Vanna White will stay on as co-host at least until 2026. That's it for CBC Windsor News. Thanks so much for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you back here next week.